Just as a bit of a content warning before we get into this video deals with really hard topics such as rape and child abuse. So if you are particularly sensitive to these topics, please feel free to skip this video. This video is also going to detail a certain amount of self-disclosure, which means that I will be talking about my own personal experiences. So if that is not interesting to you, you may also feel free to skip this. This video has to do with reconciling childlike perceptions with adult foundations. The biggest thing that helped me to contextualize my experiences was meeting other children that were similar to me and who had endured similar experiences. When I was a child, I ended up in group therapy with others through a program called Romeo Dallaire Child Soldiers Initiative here in Halifax, Nova Scotia. These were not fictional kids, these were real kids. Now that I'm an adult, I can reflect back on those experiences and recognize that each and every one of them deserves compassion. It's also important to understand the actual effect of the terms deserve and punishment, not just on you, but on your greater community. For a long time, I believed that I belonged in prison and that it would be acceptable to suffer as a result of my actions that I undertook as a child. But as an adult, I realized that all of this is a cyclical continuation of violence and abuse. That is, it would transform the victim of the person who I had victimized. It would transform them into a perpetrator, and then they would have to deal with the moral injury of their own actions. What we deserve is dignity and compassion. That is what every human person deserves, regardless of what they have done and what they believe. One thing I struggle with as an adult is that when I was a child, I actually did understand that my actions and the actions of those around me were wrong. But what has been instrumental in gaining a sense of understanding just how undeveloped I was as a child is the gradual exposure to adult logic in similar circumstances. For example, I'm currently reading Romeo Dallaire's book, and I will bring that up. They Fight Like Soldiers, They Die Like Children. This is the book that he has written that was an introduction to the Child Soldiers Initiative that he started that program here in Halifax at Dalhousie University. This is a fictionalized account based on his own experiences having encountered child soldiers in Rwanda. So this is from the perspective of a peacekeeper who must kill a child soldier before that soldier kills him. If you are being fired upon, you fire back or die. It was self-defense. Of course it was. No one could argue that this presented an ethical or moral or legal dilemma. But if I had done nothing wrong, why was I so sick to my stomach? She had been shooting at innocent villagers and had shot directly at me, but had missed. I shot back and I did not miss. That's what happened. This is an adult's interpretation of a traumatic experience. Yes, they are struggling, just as adults also struggle with rape and sexual assault, but they are also able to adequately speak of these events from the perspective of having a fully formed personal foundation. They know who they are, they understand right and wrong, and they have a clear moral code. They also understand that their emotions, guilt, remorse, regret, about the event are separate from the facts of the event. That's what happened. When I endured similar experiences as a child, I did not think that way. I internalized what happened as a reflection of my identity and was not able to recognize that these events were occurring from outside of myself, as children are completely self-referential beings. Kids think, I did it, I wanted it, it was done to me, that means I am. My sense of morality was not developed, so while I could consign actions as good or bad, my actual understanding of what good and bad meant was not the same as an adult's, and bad behaviors could easily be justified as acceptable in the moment, especially if that was reinforced by an adult around me. One of the first things little kids learn is don't hit. But I was taught by the adults around me that I was supposed to hit. I remembered don't hit, and I knew that being hit felt painful, but an adult was now telling me that this was good, so I believed it and obeyed. If me hitting is good, but hitting is bad, that means I am bad. I found I liked hitting. If hitting is bad and I like it, then I am really bad. I also learned about stranger danger and no means no as a child, so I understood that if I said no to sex, it was rape. But I had already been told by the adults around me that being raped is good for me. If rape is good for me, but rape is bad, that means I am bad, which is why it is good for me. It is a closed circuit logical system, and what was good or bad often came from external to myself. An adult told me something was good, so I obeyed because I wanted to be good. Now that I am an adult, I see that the action was bad. But because that action occurred when I was a kid, my brain hasn't been able to move beyond childlike logic. Something morally bad happened, so I am morally bad. Kids process crime and violence much differently than adults. As humans, we want to preserve that the world has some form of inherent meaning. So actions having a fault is the typical response, and it is far easier to blame oneself than to blame the perpetrator because you pose far less of a threat to yourself, and that allows you to retain some impression that you have had control over the circumstances that happened to you, that they weren't just random, as our brain struggles to process the idea that things happen randomly. We prefer to presume that things happen for a reason. So when I say an adult raped me and rape is bad, the adult behaved badly. That is my adult logic. Integrating that with the kid logic takes time because constructing it logically is only one part of the story. Your emotions on the matter are the other component. The shame, fear, humiliation, regret, all of that must also be processed. I am ashamed because it felt good, but it's wrong. So I am wrong for feeling good. That is a child's emotional reasoning. As adults, it's important for us to work through these events using adult logic. One way that I've found helpful is to begin by writing out each experience with a "that's what happened" mindset. No opinions, no thoughts, no emotions, no analysis, simply who, what, where, when, how, and if they gave you some reason, why. But don't speculate about why for yourself if they did not give you a reason. Simply state exactly what occurred, what they said, who was where it happened, how old you were, the sequence of events leading up to it, the sequence of events afterwards, and put them into a chronological sequence. This is the beginning of something called narrative exposure therapy, and we will go into more detail about narrative exposure therapy in a later video where I will detail to you how to actually construct these timelines so that you can begin doing it for yourself. As always, thank you very much for listening, and I know that this video was quite a bit more challenging than the previous videos and that it dealt with a lot of content matter that was very heavy. So if you did listen to this, I do appreciate it. And just know that I have been working through my own stuff for a very long time. So I'm now in a much better place than I was as a child. And as a 31-year-old, I feel a lot more at peace with myself than I ever have before in my life. I'm well medicated. I'm going to therapy every 2 weeks. So I'm actually doing fairly well for myself. I wouldn't say that my story is a linear success story. I am permanently disabled. I'm not able to hold a job. I have a fair number of neurobehavioral diagnoses. I have a traumatic brain injury and a physical disability. So it's not really a super success story. I don't have education. I dropped out of school in grade 9. So and I don't really have a job. I don't really, so it's not a super success story. But for me, the fact that I'm able to feel emotions again, the fact that I'm able to feel at peace with myself and provide myself with some sense of self-compassion, that for me, that's a success. And to be able to produce this content and to be able to try and help other people and reach out for other people, that to me is my version of success. So thank you very much to all of my friends and family who have been there for me over the past several years. I could not have done it alone. As always, as Judith Herman says, healing cannot occur in isolation. Healing can only take place within the context of relationships. And that is the core and foundation of the Romeo Dallaire program, which is community reintegration, which is the number one thing that we as trauma survivors really need to focus on, is to reintegrate ourselves back into our community so that we can form a sense of our own identity and our identity as relative to others, and to be able to act as an upright human citizen with dignity, compassion, and respect. Thank you very much and have a great day.